Good afternoon.
Hello, everyone.
Good
Oh,
afternoon. Is everybody coming in? Excellent. Hope everybody's doing well. How are folks doing? Thumbs up.
yeah, I'm good.
That is cool. So as folks continue to arrive, I will just get started. So welcome back. I think we don't have any interruptions now until Columbus Day, so we'll be meeting regularly. And yeah, so today we're gonna, I'll speak just a little bit about your assignments. We're gonna go over your assignments on Wednesday. We'll do an exercise with your assignments. I'm gonna do an exercise related to your assignments today, just to do a little mini assignment for Wednesday. But for now, we'll go over it more in depth on Wednesday, and I'll giving you feedback on your assignments also by then, and so we'll be able to talk about them specifically. So let me just open my chat just to keep it. Yes, all the good evenings are coming in, good afternoons. We're like right in that middle place, right? 5:30 to 6, we're going from the afternoon into the evening. This is also this week for all of you. This is if you follow any of the cosmic energy of the universe, we're in a change, right? Right now it's the end of the summer officially, right? We're turning into fall. For some folks, this is it's a transition of seasons, but it's also, they say, a cosmic transition, right? That it's the time of the energy over this week. What's happening, it's usually never like on a day, but over this week, we are starting to gather and harvest and prepare ourselves for the coming months of winter. So emotionally gathering, emotionally harvesting your friendships and your relationships, taking stock of things. So I just say that that we're aware of sometimes the energy that's happening on different levels at the same time in the world. So, all right. So now that we know that what's going on with energy and transition, we can transition into the class. Today, what we're going to do is some of the instructional things that are to prepare you for your essay. So a week from Wednesday, you will have an essay due. And I said today I was going to talk more specifically about it, and then and you'll see the assignment on it as well. And then you'll see a little bit of what we've been working on is kind of like the building blocks for your essay. So today, hopefully, the plan is to go through there's a handout, and I'm going to go to the Blackboard so you can see it. We can do it together, and we'll do some nuts and bolts practical things around essay construction and writing today. So I'm going to let me just get it together. I have it open. I had it open, I guess. My Chrome changed. Oh yes, that's going on too. Here we go. Blackboard. Yes. Okay, so let me share my screen with all of you. You can see what I'm doing and not just hearing me talk. And then I think I have to put on gallery, speaker, and then share my screen. All right. So here I am in Blackboard, and I'm going to go to our class. And I'm going to go to course content. Right here, I created a new folder called General Handouts. So I took the whole handout that we're going to dive into today, and I put it here, and I added some other ones inside of here. 1 second. Did somebody take care of that? Just in case. So the handout I'm looking at is the very first one in the general handouts. It's called Writing an Essay. So I just clicked it open, and I'm going to open it with, I'm going to use my Adobe to open it. Go. And you would download it however you download it on your computer so you can have it. But for now, I'm sharing the screen so that you could follow along. And I'll make us small so we don't see ourselves. We see most of the screen. And this is what's up. So we're going to be talking about an essay. So I'm just showing you where we are. I'm going to come back into the classroom so we can talk a little bit. So so tell me, like, just with a show of hand, there's a, at the bottom, you see a little reaction. There's a little button that says reactions at the bottom of the screen. And one of them is a, you could raise your hand. So who has written an essay? Just raise your hands. It's like I just did. Okay, you could raise your physical hand, but you could also raise your reaction hand for those of you who are not on camera, right? So written an essay anytime in your life, not just in college. Okay. So I would say if I look at my screen, about half, right? About half of the class, more people keep joining us. So about half the class are admitting to have written an essay. So for those of you who've written an essay, talk to me. What is an essay?
An essay is basically like a summary of a topic.
Okay, that's an essay can be that. That's one of the possibilities of an essay. There's different types of essay, right?
An essay also usually has like 5 paragraphs with like an introduction and a conclusion and like 3 body paragraphs.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So
it could be like an argument, a position that you're trying to express or support, research based.
Mm-hmm. It could be a research-based one. It could be an argument. It could be an argument or point that you're going to make and you're going to support and prove. It could be all of those things. And someone, I know people were just talking, and I encourage you to unmute and talk. I love that. It's okay. We'll figure out. If it gets too noisy, I'll say hold it one at a time. But someone said they talked about a 5-paragraph essay, which is the title of the handout. But one of the things they said that it has a introduction, they had body, they had conclusion, right? So that's what I wanted to go. That's the place I'm going to go to first, right? That one of the things, whether it's a research paper, whether it's an argumentative essay, whether it's exposition essay, whether you're doing some kind of summary, some essay that summarizes an idea or a topic, there are 3 components to every essay. And that is an introduction, right? And that's a paragraph or a page, depending on it. For the sake of this class, I'm going to say a paragraph, right? That introduces the essay. Then there is the body paragraph that explains further what you state in the introduction. And then there is a conclusion that either will summarize or give the final argumentative point or reveal not new information necessarily in expositions, but will then kind of conclude, or if you're making a point, makes the final point of the essay, right? So think about that. Think about that the essay has those 3 parts, right? An intro, a body, and a conclusion, right? 3 sections. If it's missing any one of those sections, it's not an essay, okay? So it has to have those 3 pieces: an intro, a body, and a conclusion, right? So, and then remember, the introduction does exactly what it says. If I come to introduce myself, I have to say, hello, everybody. My name is Charles Rice-Gonzalez. I'm a professor, and I'm going to teach your class today on writing an essay, right? Now you know who I am and what we're doing. Now, the next part of what I'm going to do is how to do the essay. That's the body, right? So you got the little introduction, right? And then in the body, you're going to see the pieces of it, right? Dylan in the club. And then at the end, I'm going to say, okay, does everybody understand? let me go over what we did today. We did this, we did that, and we did that. I'll do that at the end of the class. That's my conclusion, right? So if you see the structure that I'm explaining now of my class, is going to be similar to the structure of what an essay is, right? So one of the important things about the introduction, right, is this phrase that's called a thesis statement. And so a lot of times people hear the word thesis statement and it goes, and there's like, people go blank. Like, what the hell is that? A thesis, what, you know, is it like, right? But a thesis statement, if you go back to my example of structuring the class, and I said, hello, my name is, you know, and I'm your professor. And that's what we're going to do today, right, is we're going to learn the elements of an essay. That is my thesis statement, right? That what we're going to do today is this one concise thing. How I explain it comes later on in the body, right? Comes later on in the class. And at the end, I'm going to do a conclusion. So when you hear the word thesis statement inside of the introduction, so all introductions have a thesis statement. And the thesis statement is simply, what is this essay about, right? What is this essay going to discuss? Now, if you think of a 5-paragraph essay, right? And we're going to look at the chart in a minute, because I think to be visual, if I was in the classroom, that's what I miss in the classroom. Maybe I should. So I'm in my home office. I created a home office. So maybe I'll start writing on my wall here, or get a chalkboard to write on the wall. But then I have to move the computer. Anyway, we'll figure it out. But so we will be writing these things on the board. But we're going to go to the handout, right? So in this class, I'm going to say, as a model, right? You're not restricted. You're not conformed. You're not bound by this, but we're going to work on the idea of a 5-paragraph essay, because a 5-paragraph essay offers you the basic structure of crafting an essay, right? The basic structure of crafting an essay. So this is not the only way to craft an essay, but it's the basic way to craft an essay, okay? So I'm going to share my screen, and some of what I said is written down, but we're going to look at it so that way when I do my conclusion of the class, and you want to go back to it, you know where to go and how to look for it, okay? So I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. And okay, so here we go, right? 5-paragraph essay, crafting a thesis statement. Ooh, made it too big. Let's see if I could close this, have more screen space, and make it a little bigger in case anybody is on their phone.
Professor, I'm sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt you,
Sure.
but I wanted to bring it up just in case we don't get to this part, just for you to be able to fix it. In these 2 pages, they were printed together. This one,
Oh, I can't see you.
okay. Sorry, this one,
What does it say? I can't.
it says formatting the first page of your paper.
Oh,
Just in
okay,
case
all
we
right.
don't get to it, but however, the second page you get put, it's very blurry, and it's
Yeah,
not
it's-
my copy. I just wanted
Yeah.
to let you know.
Yeah, the blur is like, because you don't need to read what's there. You just, I want you to see the physical structure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and those two. So we're going to get to that. Hopefully we will get to that. I wanted to do that, and I want to read a poem. Let's see if that happens. Let's see. You know, so okay, let's share the screen again. All right.
Want somebody to keep you on time, Mr. Professor?
Why don't we
Time
do this if it's 6:30? Somebody say, Professor, 6:30.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I look at my little clock, but sometimes, you know, I get into it. So here at the handout talks about what I just mentioned, right? The 5-paragraph essay and doing a thesis statement. So here it talks about how the introductory paragraph, right, introduces what you should start with a general discussion of your subject and lead to or include a specific statement of your main point, which is the thesis statement, right? The introductory paragraph lays the groundwork for the paper, introduces the reader to what you're going to write about, and then states the thesis statement, right? And not necessarily in that order, but the thesis statement is a part of it. Then in a 5-paragraph essay, if you're going to write, if your introductory paragraph is 1 paragraph and your conclusion is is another paragraph, that's just 2, and you need 3 more paragraphs. So the other 3 paragraphs will be your body, right? So the body paragraphs will have a first body paragraph, right? we'll have a second body paragraph and a third, right? So there'll be 3 body paragraphs. So now, why 3? Who came up with this number? Well, it's a basic way, and I'm going to come back into the class, okay? It's just a basic way of structuring an essay. So let me give you an example. Let me go right to the essay that you will need to write, right? And now you're going to see, hopefully you'll see a little bit of a connection with your last assignment, right? So in your last assignment, I asked you to take one poem, to identify a theme and write a paragraph on it, and identify a poetic element and write a paragraph on it, right? So you've got 2 ideas. Now, if you had a third idea and you wrote a paragraph on it, right, you would have the 3 body paragraphs for an essay, right? And to finish off the essay, instead of just 3 body paragraphs, because I said if it's only a body, it's not an essay, right? It has to have an intro, a body, and a conclusion. So to take those 3 paragraphs and make it an essay, you'd have to put an introduction first and then write a conclusion. And then you would have an essay that explored a theme and maybe 2 poetic elements, right? And so if you're exploring 1 theme and 2 poetic elements, what do you think that is? The idea of exploring the theme in the construction of an essay. If you're saying, I'm gonna talk about 1 theme and 2 poetic elements, what could that be?
You're constructing an essay.
Yes, but what specific part?
Body part, your body of your
Body?
essay.
Right, each body will have those
the
pieces.
theme-
Those 2.
Say it again. So the stating of I'm going to explore a theme and 2 elements, to state that, that's your thesis statement, right? So if you say, in this essay, I will discuss the theme of jealousy in the poem and explore rhyme and explore imagery, right? That is your thesis statement. That is right. Because now your first body paragraph is going to be about the theme of jealousy. The second body paragraph is going to be the first element, right? Rhyme, if you said, and the third one will be imagery, right? And so there you would have the structure for your essay.
Professor,
Yeah.
so like the elements will be like, let's say if I have 2 views of my theme, that's the 2 elements.
Yeah, if you're exploring 2 ideas,
let's say,
right?
like a pro and a con, and
Right. Yeah.
And then when my conclusion, I will write.
Get a decision.
Make a decision. Yes.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Right. And that's a different type of essay. That's a compare and contrast. Mabel?
Yes. So my other question is, would you like for us to commit, or is it preferable for us to commit to 1 poem?
No.
Or
So go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Keep going. Or
okay. Or
no, do your or.
also
Tell me your
say
or.
My or is a poem for the theme, and then maybe another poem that has more elements in it. Maybe a poem that has like more than 1 element, and we could focus on that poem.
Okay. So one of the things to think about when you're writing an essay is also cohesion. So I'm not sure if this is going to be it, but the reason why I said, so let me just say this. So let's say, and again, I don't want to, I know once I start talking about the assignment, everybody wants to know what they have to do. But trust me, we're going to go back to that handout, right? So what I'm asking you to do, this is the assignment. Basically, the assignment is going to be to do, oh, Jackie, sorry, left Jackie.
I don't want to sidetrack you too much.
No,
The
it's
only
okay.
reason I mentioned this was because in the assignment that was due for yesterday or today, I picked poems from the packet, and I didn't necessarily use the same poems that we've gone over. But I
Right.
do understand what you're saying about cohesion, because if I do talk about a theme and about 1 poem, and then I focus on elements in another one, then it's going to be quite difficult to bring it all together unless they're poems by the same author and they share something.
Exactly.
Is that okay?
That's
All right.
you're going down the right line. So then, so let's say right now, so your assignment, and we'll read it. The assignment is going to be to pick a poem, right? And maybe one you already picked and you're going to develop it further, right? Or it could be one that you're like, oh, now that I know what I'm doing, I think I want to work on this other poem, right? So the assignment is going to be to pick one of the poems that we're going to do more. We're going to work together on Wednesday with some more poems, so it's going to be to pick a poem, to pick 3 elements to write about, right? And to craft that into an essay, right? And theme is an element, right? Theme, imagery, symbolism, similes, metaphors, any of those things. You have a huge menu to pick from, right? But you got to find 3 elements to talk about from that poem. Now, technically, you did an assignment, right, where you had a theme and an element to talk about. So you may have already, if you decide to stick with it, you can build on that, right? That's completely okay, right? So you've already kind of gotten it started. But if you want to pick another poem, you'll know the structure of how you need to construct this next one. So just think about that. Right now, you were told, pick a poem, write about a theme, write about an element, write about a paragraph for each, and that's it, right? And so for me, I'm looking at how you construct this paragraph, and we'll look at that in a little bit, right? How you construct the paragraphs, because it's important to understand that each paragraph has its own structure. The way we're talking about the essay having a structure, the paragraphs have a structure. And so a lot of times when we go a little deeper into the paragraph structure, which we will not do today, we will do on Wednesday, you'll see, because I just want you to, when you go to bed tonight, I just want to make sure you got the essay structure in your head, okay? And you're not also thinking about the paragraph. We'll deal with the paragraph on Wednesday, right? So I want you to think about that. But the idea of the assignment, so I tell you the assignment, it's not that much like a big secret or reveal. It's kind of an expansion of what you're already working on. So that's what it's going to be, right? So you're going to have to either pick one more element to write about, or new elements to write about for the poem you picked, or you can pick another poem and start from scratch. So you have your option. Let me go back to sharing the screen, unless there's questions. Let's pause. Okay, cool. All right. So the first body paragraph, right, we'll talk about the first element you talk about. The second paragraph will talk more about the second element you talk about. The third paragraph will talk about the third one, and then you will write a conclusion. So this is a little bit of the body paragraphs. I'm just going to tell you for your essays, I offer you information on how to construct your body paragraph, but I said we're going to go into that on Wednesday. And then you write a conclusion, okay, which will restate your thesis statement. It doesn't repeat it, right? It restates your main point and any summarizing ideas about the poem, about the essay. You don't introduce a whole new idea or a whole new concept. You don't start bringing more information into your conclusion. Your conclusion is a reflection of what you've just written. It's a restatement of your main point. And it's so therefore, this is my conclusion, okay? So, some people learn visually. So the introduction's the main at the top, and then your body paragraphs come below it. This is the conclusion. This basically has the same information that is up on top. And so I just want to go now to spend a little time on writing a thesis statement, okay? So I'm going to, so let me just talk about, I spoke about a thesis statement already, but let's look at the information here in the handout. So every paper, the thesis statement is the foundation of your essay. If there's no thesis statement, it's hard to follow, for the reader to follow what your paper is about. So if at the beginning, if I just said, hey, everybody, welcome to class, my name is Charles Rice-Gonzalez. And introduction of an essay is this, and a body paragraph is, if I just went into that without letting you know this is what we're going to do, it might take you a minute to get up to speed on what I'm talking about, right? So it's important that the thesis statement that you understand is the foundation of the paper, that every essay has a thesis statement, right? There's no essay, that's another part of it, there's no thesis statement. Your essay has a wobbly wheel, right? It's going to be moving along a little wonkily. So people say, how long a thesis statement needs to be? So a thesis statement for our papers most likely will be like 1 sentence. It could possibly be 2 sentences, but it should be just 1 sentence, right? Because we're not writing very long papers. Sometimes a longer paper might require a more explanation of the thesis, right? Sometimes an introductory paragraph could be an introductory page or two, right? Or an introduction could be several pages to a longer work. But for our class, we're doing, our papers are between 3 and 5 pages. And so, so our essays most likely will have just a body, just an introductory paragraph, and the thesis statement will be like 1 to 2 sentences. So thesis statement here, right, is one of the ways to think of it, a roadmap for the paper. In other words, it tells the reader what to expect of the paper. An example is, I will talk about the theme of jealousy, symbolism, and imagery in this poem. Now I know that what you're going to discuss and explain further is the theme of jealousy, is symbolism, and imagery in this paper, right? The roadmap. It's showing me the road, the elements of how you're going to work on it and how you're going to explain it and the order in which you're going to do it as well. So it's usually a single sentence somewhere in your first paragraph that presents your argument to the reader, right? The rest of the paper, the body of the essay gathers and organizes evidence that will persuade the reader of the logic of your interpretation and makes the claim that others might dispute in some cases. So it's some thesis statement. So some thesis statements, when you're making an argument or something like that, will state the case. That will be your thesis statement. In our case, we're writing an expository, which means that you're explaining something. So in our case, the thesis statement will be for this, particularly for this paper, most likely in the next paper, but for this paper and the next paper is going to be exploring these ideas, right? They're exploring the elements of poetry, right? Some of the elements are themes, symbolism, imagery, sound, rhythm, the way they look on the page, alliteration, cacophony, metaphors, simile. I can keep going down the list. Everything that's in that handout and more that is in the handout, the Elements of Poetry handout, are the things that you're going to be picking and exploring inside of the poems. Okay. And I have this line here about literary analysis. That's a different kind of thesis statement, but these are what we're doing. That in terms of this literary analysis, we're analyzing literature. In this case, we're analyzing a poem, right? We're looking at a poem, we are reading a poem, we are getting understanding or meaning or ideas or feelings from the poem. We're able to not only read and get these ideas, but we're able to get, in terms of ideas, in terms of the main points, in terms of the themes of the poem. And we're also becoming able to identify how poems are constructed. What are the elements? What are the techniques? What is the craft that poets use to craft poems? Craft meaning the elements that I'm talking about, the symbolism and the imagery and all those things that you have so far in this class have talked really well about in the poems that you are exploring. You are being able, I'm seeing it, I've witnessed it in your previous assignment, I witnessed it in this assignment. So I know you are doing the work. So we're doing analysis of literature. And sometimes that sounds like a big, gigantic thing, but it is a big, gigantic thing, but it's something that we can handle, right? We can analyze literature, we can read it, we can discern, right? So let's look at some sample thesis statements. Let me see, let me pick one that, okay, let me just do this one. Let me just start with the first one. I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it into another thing. Right. I'm copying this. That is your, oh, there's one of your classes. I'm trying to make good on transferring your classes to YouTube so that I can put them on our website. I was going to try to do it by now, but I'm literally in the process of that. The other one, that one's ready. And new document. Okay. So here is from that, from our handout. In A Worn Path, Eudora Welty creates a fictional character in Phoenix Jackson, whose determination, faith, and cunning illustrate the indomitable human spirit. Okay? This is a thesis statement, right? In A Worn Path, Eudora Welty creates a fictional character who, in Phoenix Jackson, whose determination, faith, and cunning illustrate the indomitable human spirit. So this thesis statement, right here, tells me that, first of all, this is standing by itself, so it has more information probably than yours might have, right? Because you would probably stated the work and the name of the author earlier, but you could also repeat it in the thesis statement. So in A Worn Path, right, by Eudora Welty's creates a fictional character in Phoenix Jackson whose determination, faith, and cunning illustrate the indomitable human spirit. So what here we're going to know, they're going to be talking about Phoenix Jackson, right? So she's talking about a character, Phoenix Jackson. And what are the three elements that they're going to talk about? She's doing a character study, right? We can see they're going to look about the determination of Phoenix Jackson, the faith of Phoenix Jackson, and the cunning of Phoenix Jackson, right? And they illustrate his human spirit, right? Or the human spirit, right? That you can't keep it down, right? So in A Worn Path, Eudora Welty creates a fictional character in Phoenix Jackson whose determination, faith, and cunning illustrate the indomitable human spirit. So with this, if I read this thesis statement, then I'm going to say body paragraph 1. Right? Because it's going to have 3 body paragraphs because she listed 3 things that she's going to explore: determination, faith, and cunning, right? So the first body paragraph is going to be exploring which one?
Determination.
Right? The second one,
Faith.
and the last one,
Cunning.
cunning, right? And then there will be a conclusion to all this, right? There's a raised hand. Let me come back into the classroom.
Thank you.
Okay. Is it Yanidis?
Yes. So, in this thesis statement, it's like, how can I put it? It's not like a really clear thesis statement, like, okay, this is what I'm going to talk about. It's just explaining sort of what the author is talking about in the poem. So are we to assume that's what they will be talking about for the rest of the essay? Because it's not like a clear cut, like, I am going to be speaking about, like the examples you gave us earlier in the class. It's more like assuming that's exactly what they'll be talking about, if you understand.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. So I should like hit my hand and say, when I say I will be, right? Because I'm going to say another thing. In the essay, you should not use the word I. And the essay for your final one for September 29th, you should not say I will discuss. You could say the essay will discuss. The author shows that, right? So we're writing it in third person. We're not writing it in first person, right?
Okay.
So that's what you're seeing in that thesis statement is saying, and because what you're talking about is what you're going to be able to support by using text in the poem, right? To show an example from the poem, right? So you are identifying something, right? You are making some kind of analysis, but you are, right? Because even if you're saying this is imagery, that's you making an analysis, right? You saying this is what I understand imagery to be, and when I read this poem, this is imagery, and let me show you where that is in this poem, right? That here's how I'm backing up what my understanding of what imagery is.
Great. Okay.
So in that example, they're talking about, we know that student that's writing saying, the author is saying, wrote a character, and the character, right, is their determination, their faith, and their cunning. So we know that those are the 3 things they're going to analyze in that character. Right now we're working in poetry, so we're not doing character analysis. Later on, we'll do fiction. That could very well be an example of a thesis statement that one of you might write when you're exploring a character in one of the pieces. So let me go back to the handout. And okay. And I'm going to do another one. Oh, instead of giving you an example, let me give you one of the basic templates, right? That's next in here, okay. The next example in the text, let me share my screen so you can see what I'm doing. So in the next example, one basic simple pattern for a thesis statement is this, right? And that you say the author uses, and you name 3 poetic elements, right? Here I put them, and then in the name of the poem, 2, do something, and then the main idea of the purpose of the poem, right? So let me just look at all the other ones here. Yes, okay. We go here, here, keep here. All right, these are new things. Okay, so like a template, and again, this didn't copy the lines. So I have to add the lines. Excuse me. This example is closer to something that you might want to construct, right? So the example, the way this looks here, right? So you said the name of the author, and this is Arzamora Lindmark, right? Uses illusion, symbolism, and visual imagery in the poem First Lessons to convey ways to teach writers what to avoid and what to incorporate when composing poems based on other literary works, right? So here, these are the 3 poetic elements that this person is going to be exploring in relationship to this poem, First Lessons, right? So I'm gonna do one, right, based on, here's an example of one of the assignments. This is not anyone from this class, right? This is another a previous assignment, right? The theme and element assignment, right? So this is the assignment that you did. In this one, this student wrote, the poem Still I Rise by Maya Angelou contains the main theme of overcoming struggle, right? So here we go, right at the top, this is what this paragraph is about. A theme is the main idea or significant lesson the writer would like the reader to take away, right? They explain what a theme is, right? And then it says, throughout the poem, Angelou expresses some of her challenges and how she overcomes them. She shares that instead of staying down when she falls, she chooses to rise. She goes on, right? And they explain it through here. But we see right in the beginning, this paragraph is about the theme of overcoming struggle. Let me go to the second paragraph, right? They go to the second paragraph, right? Angelou uses multiple poetic elements in Still I Rise. The poetic elements are essential in proving the message and emphasizing the central theme. For instance, the elements such as repetition, metaphors, and similes portrays Angelou's mastery and her ability to express emotions, right? So they're going to be talking about 3 poetic elements inside of this one, inside of this here. So if I was just to pause for a minute, right? and just say, let me pull out, let's just pull out, you know, 2 of these, repetition and metaphors, right? And we got the theme up there. And right, so I'm going to pull that out, working backward a little bit. And then we know the theme, they said, right? These are the 3 things they're going to talk about. So if I'm going to construct a thesis statement, right? A very simple thesis statement. I'm going to stop for a second and come into the class, right? So we're going to use that. So if you notice, I look now. I want you to think of your assignment, right? Because you had to pick 1 theme and 1 element, right? You're going to see where I'm heading with this in a minute, right? 1 theme and 1 element, and then I'm going to construct a thesis statement off of that. So I looked at the student's paper, right? They were ambitious and they talked about more than 1 element, but I'm going to say, let's separate it out. So I'm going to do a theme and let's talk about 2 elements. And so from that is the foundation of crafting the thesis statement, because that's what the body paragraphs are discussing, right? So we're working a little backward. So I'm going to go back, share the screen. Right. So one thing I could do is, and if I look at a little bit of this template, right, which is just basically a template, right? It's not like the rule, right? The author uses blank, 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 right? I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to say Maya Angelou uses repetition, metaphors, and the theme of overcoming struggles to illustrate maybe empowerment in her poem, right? And so we see the 3 poetic elements that this one is going to talk about, right? In relationship, and it's going to use to show the main idea of the poem, right? Which is, we're going to read, maybe we'll meet Maya Angelou's poem today, right? So that what I just do makes sense. Or I should say, ask me questions.
Questions.
I mean, it does make sense, but I guess for me, it'll probably make more sense when I start writing it,
Right.
and hearing it. Like,
So,
especially the theme and, you know, and then the elements. But I do have a better understanding now. I haven't done my assignment that was due on Sunday. And probably that was one of the reasons. Was because I was a little confused. But now talking about it, it's much clearer for me. Kind of differentiate theme and the element.
Now, Gregory, you got that? Because I'm going to say something that might confuse you.
Don't worry, I have a pen.
So that you said the theme and the elements, and you separated them out, right? But understand that theme is an element, right? When we talk about the elements, we talk about the things that construct a poem, right?
Okay.
And so theme is one of the elements. I specifically gave you theme as one element, and then I generally spoke about poetic, I should have said theme and another poetic element. Maybe I'll do that in the future so that people understand that theme is one element and another poetic element, you know, that which could be imagery or symbolism or any of those other kinds of things, right? So that will be helpful, right? But but the assignment, I'm going to ask you to look at your paragraph. So this is, you know, I know I'm not calling you out. You admit it. You didn't do your you didn't do your assignment, which is, you know, okay. I mean, you can do it today. But part of the reason why sometimes it's important to do the assignments when they're due is because the lessons build on each other. And so hopefully if you did your assignment, which much of you did, you at least have an idea of what you're talking about, so that the next step of what I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say, we'll feel it out, but I'm going to ask you, or we can do it in class, to then start creating a thesis statement just based on the 2 paragraphs that you wrote, right? So that's going to be your homework, just to write one thesis statement based on the paragraph that you wrote, on your assignment you wrote the 2 paragraphs, okay? So I want to go to Adama, and then I want to go to Johnny.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yes.
I noticed that in the example for the thesis, they introduce the theme at the end. I don't know if we have to write the essay for the paragraph. I don't know how to say it.
What
The first
she's trying to
paragraph,
say,
we
maybe.
talk about the theme. It should be in order, or
You mean in terms of the thesis statement? So the thesis statement,
yeah.
the things should be listed in the order that you're, so say in your body paragraph, let's say your first body paragraph is about the theme. So that when you're writing your thesis statement, the theme should be stated first and then the other element. If you did it the other way around, if somebody wrote about symbolism and then the theme, your paragraphs, then you would write, it would be in the same order, the lists that are listed are the same order of the body paragraphs.
Okay,
Is that what you were asking? Okay.
Yes.
Coherency.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Joanny?
Usually the theme, it has to be at the beginning, because I know sometimes it has been in other, maybe I have seen it on the bottom or the last sentence.
Well, depends what you mean about the theme or the thesis statement. What do
The
you mean?
thesis, the
All right,
thesis.
so the thesis statement could be anywhere in the introductory paragraph, depending on how you structure it, right? So I'm gonna give you, we haven't gotten to, I'm gonna do the introduction. My plans to do the introduction on Wednesday, introduction and the elements of the body paragraph, because they're talking about the elements of a paragraph. But what I wanted you to do is write the thesis statement. So where the thesis statement is in the introduction really can be in the beginning or can be at the end. Most people most paragraphs are at the end, right? And that is kind of has a natural flow, right? Because in the beginning of it, at the top, you have to at least somewhere in the first sentence or 2 state the poem, right? You got to state what literary work you're going to look at. So you have to name the poem, you have to name the title of the poem and the poet.
And
You have to give a synopsis of the poem, because whoever read it has not read the poem, pretend they didn't read the poem, and then you state what you want to write about. So that's kind of a natural progression. But what I do want to maybe, yeah, sometimes Sunday students like, just tell me to do it that way. And that way I can know how to do it that way. And then I could do it different ways later on. So maybe we should do it that way. Let's just say that for this class, for your first poem, for your first essay rather, that I'm going to ask you to state the poem and the author toward the beginning within the first sentence. Then you're going to talk about 2 to 3 sentences about something about the poem, and then you will state your thesis statement. Okay. So, but for Wednesday, I want you to look at your essay and write just the thesis statement. All right. And I'm going to actually give you, why don't we use the format? I'm going to show you the 2. I'm going to do the same one in a different way. You have a choice. Okay. So in this case, let me make it bigger. Right. So what I did was let's pretend I wrote this, right? So I went to my paper and the professor just asked me to write a thesis statement based on my 2 paragraphs. So I went to my first one and I said, okay, I know that my first theme, the first element I'm working with is the theme of overcoming struggle. So that's the first one. And then in my second one, in this case, you would just have 1, right? So let's just pretend this person I only wrote about, repetition, right? So those are my 2 elements, right? So let me just even get rid of metaphor right here. Right, so let's say I'm working with 2, because that's what you're going to be working with, right? So number 1, thing I identified, first paragraph deals with that, and my second paragraph deals with repetition. Okay, So those are my two elements, the two paragraphs that I wrote about for my assignment. Now the professor wants me to make it into a thesis statement. So in this case, the first example that I gave you all was this way, right? Maya Angelou uses repetition and over the theme of overcoming struggles to illustrate empowerment in her poem, right? Another way I could do it is the other way. I'm going to use here, I'm going to put this title of it.
That's the way that I started when it was about the theme. I mentioned the author and the.
Okay. Okay. So and both of these are fine as thesis statements, but if you notice here, we put them at the beginning. Let me highlight it. Can I highlight it? Yes, I can. Here's where the two elements are. And then here, I did them later on. Okay, now I'm gonna take a look at it and I'll add this to our class for today. All right, so now we have, and it's in the order in my screen, just has Adama, Mabel, and that's it. Adama, still, is that your hand up or from before? All right, so Mabel, you're up.
Okay, so two things because it's 6:28 and I want to respect the time. So I had my aha moment when you were speaking where about structuring it. So basically, once we identify a theme, once we identify a theme, we can use two poetic elements to describe how that theme is brought out.
You could do that as well.
Okay. That just because, yeah, I'm poetry is not my strength. I'm not big on poetry. I'm more like fiction. Yeah, pretty
It's
much
coming.
fiction.
It's coming. Fiction's next. But with poetry, what we're doing with poetry, it's almost the same structure for your fiction essay, right? So it's not, so part of it is, that's why in a way, we haven't moved through a lot of more poems than I want to. I'm staying with just a small group of poems so that we can dive deeper into them and work with the same poems. You know what I mean? Now I gave you an opportunity to kind of go buck wild and go and find something else. Some people didn't. Some people worked on the Queen. Some people worked on First Poem for You. Some people worked on Life as a Dance. You know, some people stuck to the ones we did together. Some of you went to different places, which is fine. I think you're all finding your own comfort zone. But I think whether you want to stick with what we're doing or go to another place, at the very base, we're all learning how to read a poem and at least understand it at some level, right? Get something from it. Okay.
And then I guess my other thing would be, is this cheating if we ask for a selection that you suggest?
What do you mean, a poem?
Not a poem, but maybe like from our poetry packet. Like, I highly recommend, right? Or would that be too much?
No, I mean, I could recommend, you know, I mean, I could recommend poems, you know, somebody wants me to recommend the poem, but the poems that I would recommend, I mean, the thing is, most of them are very rich, right? If I have time today, I'm going to read Still I Rise, right? Because it's a poem that I think only one or two of you picked it for your assignment, but it's a poem that I feel has a lot to work with, right? There's so much to work with in that poem. You know, and so some poems, all of them have a lot to work with, but some of them you have to dig a little deeper to find out what that stuff is, right? And so I did that at the beginning. I gave you a poem like The Queen that you don't have to dig that much. You kind of get it. Then the second poem, a First Poem for You, that one we had to dig with that one a little more, right? It didn't hit you right at the beginning. Like some things did, but you had to dig a little bit, right? So you've had experience with two different kinds of poems that have similar themes, you know, right? Of adoration, right? Of love, of passion, right? Ninoshika.
No, I just wanted to give you a heads up that it was 6:30.
Okay, thank you. All right, Joanny, oh, you put your hand down? Okay. So, so then your assignment for next class is just to look at your poem, that the assignment you did or the assignment that you will do, and then write a thesis statement, right? This is so that we can talk about it, and you can, you know, I can stand here and give you example after example and talk about it and the meaning, but until you sit down with your own self to write your thesis statement, it'll be a different experience, right? And then we can come to here and say, I did it, I think I got it, professor. I was like, oh my God. Or you could be like, you know, I tried. This is what I came up with. And then we could have something to talk about, okay? All right, so just so you all know, we did a lot today. For us to talk about the structure of an essay and to dive into the thesis statement, that's a lot, right? A lot for our brains to take in and a lot for our brains to process. Okay. So I want to take a deep breath, let it out, and we'll end class with a poem. I'll read a poem. I'll read it, Still Arise. I was going to do something else. All right. So Still Arise. Still Arise is by Maya Angelou. People know the name Maya Angelou, right? Some may know her because she's quite a very famous American poet. She was the poet laureate, the presidential poet, the inaugural poet. I mean, this year, I can't believe I forgot her name. Who was Biden's inaugural poet? She's in our packet. I put the poem in there. The young woman. All right, we'll get her name because I won't be able to sleep until I tell you her name tonight. But it's in our packet so I could see it. All right, but years ago for Clinton, one of the previous presidents, Maya Angelou was his inaugural poet. African-American woman, her famous book.
Gorman.
Thank you so much, Janidis. Now I'm gonna take a sip of, I'm drinking tea. See, here's a tea bag. It's like, a friend of mine was like, I drink wine in my cup. I'm like, that's a good trick, but I can't do that. So Amanda Gorman was the last inaugural poet, and years before her, when Clinton was president during one of his terms, Maya Angelou was. She writes a lot about her perspective of being a Black woman in America, but she really speaks a lot about empowerment and about power, period. So I'm going to read her poem, and it is 6:34 good. I'll have time to read it and then talk a little bit about it. And I was going to, oh, there she goes. There it is. So here it is. Oh wait, I'm not sharing my screen. Let me share my screen so you can see it as I read it. I know. I'll just read it, so I'll let you listen to it. Okay, here it goes. She says, Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. She died in 2014, so it's already been 7 years since we lost her. She writes, you might write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Because I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room? Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries. Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard because I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard? You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like air I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from the past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling I bear in the tide. Leaving behind the nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. Now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, right? You were seeing
I
the
like the
poem, right?
tone you use. I like the tone of voice that you use, like, because while you was reading it, it's like a feel of like the poem. I don't know if
Hmm.
that makes sense, but
Yeah, I was trying to work it. I was trying to work it for y'all.
okay.
I'm gonna show you, we'll see a video of it on, I just thought of it. I'll show you a video of it. So one of the things that's amazing about that poem, right? And we'll break it down some more, but let's see, how much time do I got? Okay, good, I have enough time. So if you saw a little bit, at least two things, right? That the paragraph the student wrote talked about the idea of overcoming struggles, right? That is that's a theme in the poem, that there's all these obstacles, but they overcome the struggles, right? And then the idea of repetition. I'm going to talk about repetition, right? She keeps saying, but like this, like still like dust, I'll rise. Like this, I'll rise. Rise means get up, right? When you're down, right? Rise means also elevating, right? Going forward, right? If you look at the end of the poem, right? The end of the poem is so one of the most, it raises the hairs on my bald head, right? It's one of the things that at the end she goes, I'll read the line so that I don't get it wrong. You know, after she says all of those things, right? She goes, the last stanza, she says, leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise, right? Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise, right? And what's clever about this poem, there's so many powerful, but the idea of repetition, that she repeats rise, rise. And at the end, she could have said, I'm the hope of the slave, I rise, right? But she says, I rise, I rise, I rise. And every time you rise, she says it, you get higher and higher and higher, right? So that's how repetition, sometimes people talk about repetition being about emphasis, right? But here repetition is about motion, right? Repetition is about emphasis as well, because she keeps letting you know, no matter what you do, I'm going to keep getting up, I'm going to keep getting up, I'm going to keep rising. And then she ends the poem with, I rise, I rise, I rise, right? In it, there's all these similes, like air, I rise, like this, I'll rise, like that, I'll rise. So my belle, if you're looking for a recommendation, you can hear one coming in this poem, right? There's similes in this poem. There's the use of repetition in this poem. There's the use of rhyme in this poem. When you read it, it's almost like a song, the way she uses sound and rhythm in this, right? She is like, uses metaphors, right? I love that she embraces her entire self, right? Her blackness, her womanness, her sexiness, right? She says it, does my sexiness upset you, right?
That's where she comes from.
Yes, she owns her whole self. There's a line in there that she says, does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? What's at the meeting of her thighs? What's there? There's a lot of women in this class. There's a lot of women in this class. Okay, we know what's there, right? So she's right. She's comparing it to a diamond, right? She's saying her femininity, her womanhood, right, is a precious stone, right? That she elevates who she is, right? In the idea of a precious stone. So anyway, so I rise, still I rise. That's one of the Maya Angelou poems that is very powerful. There's another one in the packet called Phenomenal Woman that's in there as well. And that's another popular poem of hers. But anyway, we'll get together on Wednesday. We're gonna explore, you'll do your assignment. I'll send you all an email right when class is over. Just to remind everybody that to do this, the thesis statement, and I'll open up a discussion so you can put your thesis statements in there. And then we'll look at the thesis statements. We'll work on developing the introduction of a paragraph, and we'll look at the elements of a poetry paragraph for Wednesday. And then a week from Wednesday is when your essay is going to be due. So you should already be thinking about either you're going to work with what you started or you're going to pick something new. You should have all that decided.
So
by
I
Wednesday.
was gonna ask you, do you want us to work on the poem that we used for the homework last night, or
For what?
the poems you chose, I'm sorry, for the reflections? and the first assignment, like the element,
For what?
for our thesis statement.
The thesis statement, I want you to work on the assignment that you had to do for yesterday, for Sunday.
Okay.
For those. For that one, I want you to build a thesis statement off the 2 ideas that you talked about.
Okay. Thank you.
What if we want to choose a different poem?
For what?
Same. For the thesis. Yeah,
Like,
I have
yeah.
the thing.
If you want to go for it, I'm down.
Yeah, because I was picking poems for that assignment last night, and I was just like, let me just pick poems that I find stuff in. I don't know how committed I am to writing a whole thing about them.
Right. So
So
remember,
that's
you're
why.
only writing a thesis statement. You're not writing a whole, you're not writing
No, I
your
know, but
essay.
it's gonna become an essay. So it
Right.
needs to be a poem that I can get in there with, you know.
Okay.
Right? Like
Yeah.
you can talk about, you understand, you can gather your thoughts, and it's be easier to write. Because I'm not gonna lie, writing a poem is pretty hard.
Yeah.
Or like trying to like break down, like do the verse, like do the stances on like what they mean. Like as you said, like they go deeper.
Yeah.
So
So you if some of you feel like you want to craft a thesis statement off of a different poem, by all means. Okay. I mean, I was trying to save you a little work, but you know.
no, I understand. I understand.
Some people will be like, no, Professor, I'm good. I got my 2 paragraphs. I got that to work with. But anyway, I'm also going to look at your paragraphs and comment on them. So hopefully by Wednesday, I'll give you all.
I was having trouble with my element. I did try my very best, but I don't know if I came through with what you was asking for.
All right. Well, I'll check it out and I'll let you know.
That's why I wrote to you yesterday. Sorry for that. But I was frustrated. I was like, I want to know if I did the right thing.
It looks pretty good. I took a look at it. I read through everybody's, just like a quick read, but I'll comment on them.
Thank you.
Right. Ninoshka, is that still your hand up from before or is that new?
No, it was the hand from before. I don't know how to put it back down.
Lower? Okay, I can lower it for you. And Malin.
Yes, Professor. I have a question. So, my God, I'm sorry, my voice is. The crafting of the thesis statement that we got to do today, are we gonna post it in Blackboard discussion board? Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna do 2 things. I'm gonna send an email just because there's some people who are not here today who did the assignment, but I'm gonna send them an email with the assignment, so you'll get that, and then I'll open up a discussion page today, and then so whenever you between now and next class, you could fill it in.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm just looking at the chat. April, what do you mean a 3-page explanation?
Professor, that was earlier when you were talking about the essay.
Oh, okay.
Way long ago.
Oh, yeah, don't worry. Okay, cool. Thelma? Thelma, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, I have a question. The recordings that you recording now, I was trying to find it.
You're not, because I'm recording. I already transferred 3 classes. They're on YouTube now. I'm gonna put the links on a file. I know I've been saying that for the last 2 weeks, but I'm actually doing it. So if I can even get to tonight's class before Wednesday, then they'll all be there. That way you'll be able to see. Yeah. So you're not. It's not you. It's me.
I think you can send it to us via email.
I have another question, Professor. The thesis statement, how long do you want the thesis statement to be?
1 sentence. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Gregory.
Yes, hi. I do owe you, yes, an assignment that was due yesterday. But aside from that, my assignment for symbolism, that paragraph, I haven't gotten any feedback from that. So.
All right, I'll take a look because I think I responded to everybody.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm hoping that I posted. I mean, I see it in my Blackboard, but I don't see any comments or anything like that.
All right, I'll take a look.
All right, thank you.
Me either. I just realized that now that Gregory mentioned it.
All right, well, let me take a look and see. Okay, Jacqueline, I see your response. All right. So if there are no more questions, I will, or if there are more questions, I mean, class is done. People can go off into the night and either have dinner or do whatever you got to do. And I'll just hang out here. If anybody has any more questions, I'll answer them. But if not, thank you
I
for
do
your
have
attention.
another question.
Well, good night, everyone.
Have a
See
good
you
night,
Wednesday.
Professor Rice.
Thanks
All
a
right,
lot.
I'm going to be, you're welcome. Who was this, Malin, who had another question?
I did. Okay,
Go ahead.
so I know that on the syllabus, you usually have like readings that we should do prior to the class. Is that?
No.
No? All right. So just whatever you do in the class, that's what we're gonna go with?
Yes, and then any homework, I tell you what it is, and it's in discussion.
Okay, so don't
So
go
what's
by
in
the
this?
syllabus.
Yeah, in the syllabus, sometimes those are poems that I think I want to talk about, and I might want to read, but sometimes we don't get to them, right? And sometimes we change it, so it's not like a hard. The only poems that I stick to are the first two because of that contrast between the Queen and the first poem for you, and then after that, like today, I was going to read the Tupac poem. I wasn't going to read the Still I Rise, but I figured since we read that, and a couple of people did it, I said, let me read that one. That's a Tupac's poem. Maybe I'll read it on Wednesday, but it's a little tiny, The Rose That Grew from Concrete. I think
that's an amazing poem. I love that poem.
Right? It's a tiny little poem and it packs so much inside of it too.
Yeah, there's so much behind that poem and the whole book that he wrote itself. It's
Right.
amazing.
That's the title of the book too, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, I am asking because the assignment that I turned in, I think you gave me feedback on that was like extra. I'm sorry. Let go. I'm sorry. So yeah, I responded to the poems that were in the syllabus because I thought that was like the expectation.
I said that to you, didn't I?
Yes, you did. You did. So now I know for a fact. But everybody have a good night. Thank you, Professor. See you Wednesday.
All right, my bad. Take care.
Good night, Professor. Bye.
Good night, Johnny. Hi, Dama. Do you have a question? Right. All right, then have a good night.